So, it was around 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was at home, looking through the newspaper for a new job. A few minutes later, I started thinking about Eddie. He concerned me, you know? I've felt what it's like to be in that dark, depressing spiral of sporadic thoughts, pushing you deeper, deeper, until it consumes, well, everything. We all felt it as kids. Well, Eddie, he just felt it that little bit more. I saw the signs. I really saw them. I never thought it would end up with him doing that. On the day David called me, I thought to myself, as I started to pick up the phone, this was about Eddie, wasn't it? And it was. I just never thought that he would actually do it. No, I never thought to check up on him. I never realized that maybe if I did, he wouldn't have done it. The next day, I couldn't think. I couldn't speak. Each breath I took was twisted with a pang of guilt. It was my fault, wasn't it? He took his life shortly after I left the business. I think maybe if I didn't leave, he wouldn't have left us. So here I am, clutching my head with both my hands, gripping it to the point my hands were as white as my dead brother's face, as I hyper-focused on every little detail before it led up to this, trying to see if there was any semblance of another reason why he would have left us like this. And it all fell back to me. He lived for us. He lived for the triplets. But the dream was gone. The magic was lost. The triplets split apart, just like before. I left to try and save the relationship. But in the end, I just buried it. 6 feet under. I always liked the color red. Look, even now, I love it. But back then, I couldn't look at it. I couldn't look at myself. Days on end, I would stay in the house. I wouldn't even pick up on calls. It got to the point where David was even concerned I did the same, or was planning to. He would drop by the house every couple of days or so to check up on me. It was rough. Have you ever heard of survivor's guilt? It's when someone experiences a traumatic event in which someone normally dies, and think to themselves, it should have been me that died, not them. 3 months straight, I thought that to myself. After that call. The saying, what was it? You don't realize how important something is to you until it's too late. I just wish I had the chance to call him and ask him how he was. I wish I had the chance to undo my mistake. I think it's about 4 months after that call now. 4 months after his death, I decided to get a psychologist. I never realized how helpful they can be. The idea of Eddie's death haunted me. It possessed me. But as time went on, I slowly realized it wasn't my fault. I've now realized it isn't my fault. It was never my fault. It wasn't anyone's. Looking back, I blame myself too much. 6 months from that call, I was better. I missed it, but I know he wouldn't have wanted me doing what I was doing back then. I was lost. I had lost. But what I never should have lost was myself.
Okay, the purpose of my piece was to encapsulate a character from one of the documentaries we studied, mine being Three Identical Strangers, and my character, Robert Shafran. Whilst focusing on a non-centric and unexplored theme of the documentary, I chose mine to be around the struggles of mental health, and as to how Bobby would grieve in his experience from it. And I created my imaginative text as to how I would interpret Bobby acting and feeling if we did hear him explain it within the documentary. I used the generic conventions of context and obviously voice in order to convey the character of Bobby in my imaginative, and often used colloquialisms and light commentary with slight switches between tense and lightheartedness to replicate his jovial but somewhat serious character and his wittiness within, obviously, my dialogue. I used a style that jumped from point to point, that still strings together in a cohesive manner, moving together in somewhat of a linear path whilst jumping some bit of a time period. I also used descriptive language as a visual medium, as I tried to replicate some of the aspects of the documentary and the character of Robert by taking on an American accent and positioning myself as if I was also being filmed in the documentary, which was here besides from that. But yeah, no. Upon reflecting of all the elements, I would have liked to do a lot differently if I was allowed to. I would have loved a large time allocation within the video so I could fit more content in the short film, because I had to cut a lot of the pauses that I would use for dramatic effect, which messed with the pacing, which led me to do way more editing than I would have liked to do, which was a very tiring and laborious process. I tried to use a dramatic style, which is to imitate the style of the documentary, which I also sort of put a twist on, and I think I was decently effective in communicating what I wanted to. However, due to time constraints, obviously I had to forego pacing for the script, which I would have loved the ability to just take out parts of the script so I could actually make the pacing work. The overall characterization of Bobby was a bit wafty, and reflecting upon it, I think I could do a lot more, especially in terms of camera angles. I would have loved to be able to get more, but obviously I couldn't switch between it, and there's like some content that I created that I just couldn't use because of time constraint and